Good morning, and thanks to everyone for being here. Thanks to Bader and to Acorn for joining us today. Thank you to Peggy for being willing to share her story, and thank you to Jenny for your awesome leadership on this file on behalf of New Democrats across the country. We're here today to talk about a problem that I think everyone knows very well, which is the Canadians that are trying to either buy their own home or rent an affordable home, or in the case of Peggy, trying to stay in an affordable home, are all getting kicked in the teeth. And they're getting kicked in the teeth because the market has been set up not so that they can be competing with families in like situations with similar incomes, but so that Canadians that want to find their way into a home are having to compete or take on deep-pocketed corporate investors. And that's what's structurally wrong with the Canadian housing market. There are people out there that'll tell you different things about that. The Liberals so far have only been willing to take action in respect of foreign buyers, but we know they only represent about 5% of the market. Conservatives will tell you it's government spending, it's the Bank of Canada, it's anything that they can say that will cause people to look away from the real problem, which is giant corporate profits that have been made by turning what should be a market that's about people getting their family home into an asset class to make money on. And that's not something that's happened simply by accident. That's something, if you look at the history of real estate investment trusts, what you'll see is they started taking off in 1996, which, as it happens, was right after the Liberals canceled the National Housing Strategy. And they've been gaining steam since then. It doesn't serve Canadians' interest to only look at the last 2 years and what's been happening in the housing market over the last 2 years during extraordinary times. The trend line for Canadians getting pushed out of affordable homes starts much earlier than that, and it spans across Liberal and Conservative governments alike, who have not been doing enough on the supply side, but have also fostered a culture in the tax code that rewards companies for doing exactly what's happening to Peggy, coming in and buying affordable buildings with affordable rents, rent-evicting the tenants, and jacking up the rents. They've done that through the tax code because if you're part of a real estate investment trust, you don't have to pay any corporate tax on your profits. As long as you're paying out the money that comes in to individual investors, they just pay tax as individuals, whereas normally a company would first pay corporate income tax on its profits and then pay its dividends out of what remains. The other way that Liberal and Conservative governments alike have encouraged this broken culture in the housing market has been by not renewing the operating grants that were tied to many affordable buildings, whether they're co-op housing or nonprofit housing across the country. There was federal operating money to make those units affordable, better than affordable, actually rent geared to income, which is the gold standard for affordable housing, ensuring that tenants aren't paying a disproportionate amount of their income on rent. So, because those operating grants were tied to the mortgages, and they were 40 or 50-year mortgages, those mortgages began to expire around the end of the Harper government's term. They said that they would not renew those operating grants. The Liberals ran on a commitment to save them and then didn't do it. What that means is that we have buildings across the country that traditionally have had federal operating money to ensure that they could provide affordable rents to their tenants, that have been told by Conservative and then a Liberal government, we will not renew your funding. And what's that meant is that they either have to jack up the rents themselves or they have to sell their building. And that makes them a plump target for real estate investment trusts that see a building that can no longer sustain itself. They have the cash on hand, so they can come in, they can outbid all of the nonprofit associations with experience in housing that would love to acquire buildings like these and continue on a nonprofit affordable model, but they get beat to the punch by real estate investment trusts that have more money on hand and can bid higher. So this is a problem that has been brewing for a long time. It's one that's coming home to roost. The pandemic obviously made it worse, and we can talk about some of the reasons why that is, but I think politicians and other parties are kidding themselves if they think that it was just government spending during the pandemic that has led to this crisis in the housing market. It has been building up for a long time. It is now acute, and we need to do something to cool off the market and save what we can of these affordable units. We're being told by experts that for every 1 unit of affordable housing that we build in Canada today, we're losing 15. That's not sustainable. And it's not even a drop in the bucket in terms of new supply combating the loss of supply. And real estate investment trusts and other giant corporate landlords are at the root of that problem. We need governments to address that problem if we're actually going to maintain affordable housing for Canadians. So that's why we're here today, to announce some concrete measures. Jenny talked already about having a moratorium on real estate investment trusts and corporate landlords acquiring affordable buildings. We've talked about making a fund available so that those nonprofit experts in housing can actually acquire those buildings and run them the way we need them to be run in order to maintain affordable housing. And I want to add to that list, getting rid of the preferential tax treatment for real estate investment trusts that make them an even more attractive investment opportunity and attract more capital into a mechanism that is breaking our housing market. We shouldn't be rewarding investors for doing something that makes it harder for Canadians to afford a home. And yet that continues. So this is a package of 3 things that we think can help preserve more affordable units, create more affordable units, and stop rewarding big investors that are making money by pushing Canadians out of homes that they can afford to essentially fend for themselves.